Hi guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tank12. Having to call me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks. I'm really frustrated right now because I actually made a video on the 1-2-1. Recorded everything, recorded the audio, all of it. Turns out my microphone was on mute because I muted it yesterday evening when I was going offline. Turns out everything has gone to waste because it was just muted, and I talked to myself for about 45 minutes. It's really annoying, but we're going back at it and I'm going to finish it right now. So the 1-2-1, probably one of the funnest tier 10 medium tanks I've played in a long time, and I really enjoyed this tank. I can say so much about it already. It's basically an improved WZ-120. It's kind of what you expect, with 5 degrees of gun depression instead of just 3 degrees, and it's a lot of fun. Basically, this tank doesn't have any real downsides except for its gun depression and its very long tank. It's a very large profile, at least on the side. If you compare it, for example, to the Forge 155, it's almost as long as the Forge 155. But funnily enough, the MX-30B is also as large as the 1-2-1. So maybe it's just like in my mind, but the turret is situated quite far at the front, so it kind of seems like it's a very long tank, and it's maybe not even that long, because if the turret would be further at the back, which is kind of centrally in the middle, it would not appear to be as large as it appears right now. Now, talking about the gun, this is the main reason you play this tank. 122mm gun, 440 alpha damage, and you have 3 different shell types. AP, heat, and high explosive. All of them come in a very nice package. 262mm of penetration with the AP shell, with 1150 meters per second shell velocity. That's pretty damn nice, and that's going to be good enough for you. 907 meters per second shell velocity on the heat shell and 340 millimeters penetration. That's pretty nice as well, so you don't have to worry too much about all of these super heavily armored vehicles. Also, the high explosive shell has 68 millimeters of gun depression. That's not the worst, it's also not the best, but you have 907 meters per second shell velocity, so you should definitely pick some shells of high explosive with you. In total, 40 shells, but if you have a long game with a lot of enemies that you're able to shoot at, you might run dry, but other than that, you should have enough shells in total in your inventory, and I would probably load up a lot of AP shells because I haven't been using a lot of the heat shells. Now, the rate of fire on this tank is really amazing. It's really great. Gun traverse is really good as well, 44.37 degrees per second. 5 degrees of gun depression is, well, pretty atrocious nowadays, but you can actually work with it. 15 degrees of gun elevation, on the other hand, is also not the best, but I think it's mediocre. The aim time and the dispersion on this vehicle actually are pretty damn good. Aim time of 2.34 is not too bad if you have 100% crew with Brothers in Arms, and 0.32 dispersion, that's almost on Leopard 1 level for a Chinese medium tank with a 122mm gun. Since the rate of fire is so good and the alpha damage is really high, you can actually invest a lot of, well, you have a very good average damage per minute, 3,259, and that's like one of the main attributes of the 1-2-1. That's why this tank is really powerful when you kind of have it in front of you. It's just going to be putting round after round into you if you do not pay attention. The gun is definitely the highlight of the tank, and it's really good. And it's not the only thing that is good about the tank. Tank also has some serious armor, 135mm at the front. It's not the same 160 that you have on the Object 430U, but it certainly is good enough for the 1-2-1. 80mm on the side, 60 at the rear, and on the turret you have 240mm at the front, 130 on the side, and 60 at the rear. You do have 2 cupolas that you have to be wary of, but at the same time, what I've noticed is when people are firing heat shells, they are just going right through your cheeks. So when you are close by, you have to be really careful, because any tank with heat is going to be able to really mess up your tank, even in a hull down position. HP wise, this tank has 2050 HP, but because I'm using improved hardening, I have 2260. Now, there is a reason for it. Trust me, I'm going to tell you all about it. Mobility wise, the tank is fairly nice. I have all of the field modifications, so my specific power to weight ratio has been increased to 19.01, and I am using turbo because I want to have the top speed and I want to have better specific power to weight, which I do get with the 1.7 horsepower per ton that I get with the turbo on the vehicle. Traverse speed is really good as well, 58.13. You don't have to worry too much about not being able to turn in time. It's a medium tank that is very mobile. 21 kph in reverse. It usually is 23, but because I use some field modifications, it actually is 21 kph. Concealment wise and spotting wise, this tank has 400 meters base view range, which for a Chinese medium tank is fairly good, and you don't really need coated optics for it, even with like all of the upgrades with the right crew training. You can get it to 444, and if you use premium consumables, which I would not suggest you do, because you need a fire extinguisher, because the times I have been running around without a fire extinguisher, I have been burned, so I chose to go with the fire extinguisher. But if you do put premium consumables on, you will actually have DPM of 3,450, and you're actually going to have spotting, I think, of 455 meters. So that's pretty damn impressive if you want to take that, and if you want to just ignore your firefighting skills, which I would probably train on this tank. Now I'm using a directive which gives me concealment because I don't have it on my crew. My crew is pretty bare bones, but this crew has had some pretty damn success in the 1-to-1, and it's been pretty nice. So let's move on over to the equipment. I'm going to tell you guys why I've chosen this equipment. So the turbocharger is pretty self-explanatory: to make the tank faster, give it better mobility, and because it's in a specialization slot. The second one is maybe not as much self-explanatory, but I'm going to explain to you what I did. First, I had vertical stabilizer on this tank, but you don't need it because the dispersion values on the vehicle itself are very, very good, with 0.10 when you're stationary and 0.14 when turning the turret. So these dispersion values are really, really good. You don't need vertical stabilizers, so I took it out. I want to have the max DPM, so I'm running Gun Rammer Class 1. This does give me the best flexibility. And I chose the survivability tab because I don't really need the coated optics or low noise exhaust. You can obviously go with the scouting ability and use coated optics or low noise exhaust, which would give you probably better concealment or spotting respectively, depending on which one you pick. But in the end, because I'm playing this tank so aggressively in your face, I don't really care about that because I'm going to be able to spot these guys either way when I'm close to them. So I went with improved hardening to give me, an additional 200 HP, which is quite a bit. And it also does improve my repair time for my tracks. If you look at the suspension repair time, you can see the suspension repair time has been actually reduced by quite a bit, and now I only have 9.55 seconds to repair the tracks instead of like having 12 or something like that. So that's why I went with that. Going over to field modifications, you can see I went with light alloy mounting points because having more hull traverse is always good, and because I'm always going to repair the damage. Improved sight to improve your accuracy, decrease the dispersion, anti-reflective headlight coating for better concealment, and then I went with the survivability. You can also go for scouting depending on what you prefer more, but I prefer hardening because this tank is really, really aggressive. It's really good in an attacking role. Now the next thing is sensitive optics, which gives me better view range, but at the cost of top speed. Since I do have the turbo, I can do that, and I can just reduce 2 kph and still have 59 kph, so it doesn't really affect me too much. Finally, I went with lightweight support rollers, which gives me better repair speed, better hull traverse, but I do lose the suspension durability a little bit, 30% decrease. Now, since I'm not ramming a lot of tanks, since I don't really care if anyone shoots me in the tracks because it's probably going to track me either way, I have chosen that instead of reinforced support rollers. This is not a heavy tank. I'm not expecting to be fired at all the time, so I don't really care too much about that. That is the way I've set up my 1-to-1, and I have had some fairly successful games in this vehicle, and I've been doing pretty damn well, especially in the last couple of games. Now, if we go over to the Hall of Fame, I can actually tell you guys that I've been doing pretty well. I'm in the top 17, or in the top 20 But there has been a lot of experimenting during that time. This tank is really powerful and it's really capable. So we're going to jump on over to the 2 gameplays I've prepared, and then we're going to have a final verdict on the 1-2-1, and we're going to have a final verdict on the Chinese medium tank line. Spoilers, it's actually not too bad. I think the Chinese medium tank line is pretty damn impressive, and I liked it a lot. So we're going to move on over to the gameplay, and then we're going to have a verdict. Okay, first game, we're playing on the map Fisherman's Bay, and it's a really weird game. Just so much said beforehand. Almost nobody goes on the 1-2 line, and everyone is kind of in the F8, 9, and 0 place, all the way to maybe into the grid K8, 9, and 0. We're the only tank in the middle, and it's a bit weird, but we make it work. Now the 1-2-1, as I mentioned, has some fairly nice mobility. The acceleration is a bit lacking in direct comparison to maybe the STB1 or faster tanks like the Leopard 1, but it does have armor in comparison to these vehicles. But we still managed to get into the middle fairly fast, and this is where we are going to be taking up our position, because somebody needs to be spotting these guys, and somebody needs to be putting some pressure on these guys that are all collectively hiding in the middle or trying to get some shots on my guys. As you can see right here, we get 2 shots off, 1 into the Gorilla 15, 1 into the Leopard 1. And the first thing you'll notice is the incredible DPM that we have on this vehicle. Very quickly, we do 2 rounds of fire, or we fire twice, and we do twice the amount of damage, or we damage them twice, and we actually rolled quite low, 768 for 2 rounds. It should have been at least about 880 damage if everything would be fair in this game. But it shows you just that this tank is incredibly dangerous if you do not manage it. And one guy who has noticed that is the artillery on the enemy team. We're the only guy who is sitting in the middle. We only have 1 tank on the 1-2 line. It's the Object 268 version 4. So basically, we are the furthest tank in the entire team, and we are the front line basically for our team. Unfortunately, we cannot help the Object 268 version 4, and this batch at 155, 58 is quite annoying. But thankfully, they reworked artillery and they don't do as much damage anymore. But we do kind of aim over at the ABR 105 because we want to have a little bit of a pop shot. Maybe we'll hit him. And just in that time, when I aim and I fire, the EBR 105 drives right into our shell. And we get a very nice hit with 460 damage right there. There's a VZ 55 who is now coming around the corner, and he gets absolutely demolished, taking down his HP to, I don't know, 300 damage or 300 HP in total. So you can see playing the middle has already been quite effective for us, but there is a limitation to this tank, and it's called gun depression. You only have 5 degrees of gun depression, and that really shows in certain situations. But still, don't worry, artillery is going to have our back, and artillery on the enemy team is also going to be trying to nuke us, because we are the one tank that is constantly spotted in the middle, and we are also quite easily hit, especially since both of the artillery pieces are somewhere on the A1 line or the A2 line. But now we have a little bit of a problem. We have nobody over on the 1-2 line, and the enemy team now can just basically make their way over and put some pressure on us in the middle and in the south. But the enemy team seems to be kind of incompetent because they get out-spotted by us, because we're still in the middle and nobody is taking care of us so far. Because of the gun, because of the accuracy, which is not too bad, and because of RNG, we managed to hit the Foch 155 twice, and taking away about 1,000 HP almost right there in 2 very nice shots. This VZ55 is still trying to put some pressure on the guys down south, but he gets nuked by us because he plays a little bit too aggressively there and gets spotted by us. But our luck is gonna run out, because right now we are still trying to engage the Foch 155, and we get a whopping hit by the FV4005, which does 1,820 damage. We only barely survived because we have the improvement, the improved hardening equipment on top of our tank, and we still have 69 HP, which is a very nice number. But now we have to be really careful in what we're doing, in what position we're going to be playing, and that we're not going to get hit by artillery. That is very, very important. So the enemy team actually made some moves. They decided to push the 1-2 line and finally take some tanks onto that position to put some pressure on us in the middle, but they've completely left the enemy base, or their base, open for us to move into that spot. So we take a pop shot at the 103B, we get spotted by something in return. It probably was the EBR 105 or the Leopard. And now I'm afraid of the artillery, because I know that the artillery has probably moved away from the A1 area. There's one artillery that's still there, but I know that the other artillery probably moved over to the 1 line somewhere down the 1 line, because it's completely empty. So what we're trying to do right now in this position is that we're just waiting for the enemy to make some mistakes to actually push us, and we're trying to help out our guys at the base. Our push in north is still quite effective. They've just knocked out the EBR 105, and we are now in turn able to engage this T103, who doesn't see us because he is not able to spot us at this distance, and we're using the bushes to our advantage. Now, because the enemy team have given up the middle, and because they haven't really competed for the middle enough, they are not able to really take us out of this position. But we do lose the 60 TP, and Turn was trying to be really aggressive there. He just got like one shot at by something, probably the FV4005, and now we're able to take out the T110E3. Now this is a very interesting match, because we are still in the middle. They have lost a majority of their tanks, and they're still being very aggressive. The FV4005 comes out of hiding, moves into the middle, and now is going to get absolutely annihilated by artillery and something else. We get 1,000 assistance damage right there, and our tank is still rolling around, and we haven't been knocked out by artillery. But there comes the arty shell. It drops very, very far away from us, so we don't have to be too worried about that. So the initiative now is definitely on our side. I think the initiative has been on our side for at least the last 2 minutes. And yeah, the 1-to-1 just really provides you with some very nice damage per minute, and actually some pretty decent accuracy. I haven't had like terrible bad luck with RNG so far when I was playing this tank. I always had the feeling that it really was accurate as they said it would be, with 0.32 accuracy or dispersion at 100 meters, and it's actually not too bad. I'm enjoying this tank a lot when I'm playing it from a bit further away. And that's the flexibility that you have with this tank. You have a little bit of armor, you have decent view range, you have a very nice gun, and you can basically play this up close, you can play it far away, you can play it in the middle somewhere like we did this entire game now, and it's still going to work because the shell velocity on the AP shell is good enough, the penetration on the AP shell is good enough, you have some heat shells if you really need to deal with heavily armored targets. The high explosive shells are good enough. Most of the time, unfortunately, we do not manage to penetrate the Conqueror. And now we're just kind of cleaning up. We're trying to see if we can get these Stritzwagen. Somebody else knocks them out fast enough. And you don't really need to have vertical stabilizer, because the 0.1 dispersion that you have on this tank is actually not too bad, and it's going to work out just fine. So right there, we knock out the very annoying artillery. And now we're at 4,212 damage done, and an additional 3,717 damage assisted, which in turn is about almost 8,000 damage combined. And I think this tank is really capable of doing things like this, because it's just a very good all-rounder with a very hefty gun. Now, how hefty and how strong this tank can be in these close-quarter combat, we can actually see in the other gameplay that I've prepared for you guys, where I've actually left the vertical stabilizer on the vehicle. But maybe experimenting a bit more, we can make this tank even more flexible by adding on like vents, or maybe taking away vents and putting on the scouting ability and putting on maybe like what was it called? Coated optics, and then this tank could be almost like a little scout as well. So it's pretty damn interesting. I really like the 1-to-1 so far. Second game is on the map Fjords, and it's probably one of the maps that I feature the most because I probably have like the best win rate on this map. I always play the middle, it always works out, and I basically haven't done anything else since this map has been changed into this kind of layout. It was not always like this. Fjords has been changed quite drastically, but that's been years ago. So we're taking the middle in on this map because we're quite fast. We're here first before the object 780. But now against this object 780, you're not going to be able to do more or pen them better than they will pen you because their armor is just a lot better than yours. But your rate of fire is certainly about 1/3 better than theirs. And with the heat shells, you're not going to have any trouble going through the object 780. So he's just going to be sitting here. He's going to be flanked by the chieftain, and we're just going to take one shot after another on him, and he gets absolutely demolished in a very quick fashion. This middle position allows you to go anywhere you want. You can basically shoot the guys that are going up north. You can shoot the guys that are coming in from the south. You can shoot the guys that are hiding at C4 and B4. So this is a very flexible position, and having a rate of fire and the alpha damage with this is just very nice. The DPM is going to be rolling in because you have a lot of targets to shoot at. And, you know, that's the beauty you want to see when you have a tank with high DPM. You just want to be constantly clicking the left mouse button to be doing damage. Unfortunately, the 1-to-1 is a tank that has a little bit of armor, so we are not able to pen that 1-to-1 twice, potentially leaving us with about 800 damage that we just missed on that one thing. But we're going to kill him. We might not do a lot of damage to him, but we are going to finish him off. What is very funny is that there was a T100 LT who was climbing the hill. Somebody probably pushed him up there, but he wasn't really able to do a lot on that position. We do get hit by the Rinoceronte, and you can see just how hard that thing actually does hit. I didn't know that the Rinoceronte hits for that much, but yeah, now we're just kind of waiting for the FV215B to make a move. I'm thinking about moving into the north with the rest of the team, but at the same time that FV215B just makes a misplay, moves into the position, drives back out, is probably looking for us, but doesn't see us because we are hiding behind a couple of bushes and some trees. And now we're just slowly but surely taking this guy out because he is getting stuck all the time, and we set him on fire as well. So a very casual 2000 damage almost on the FV215B 183 by just sitting right there. And you can just see how beautiful this position is and how beautiful the alpha and DPM on this vehicle is. Whenever you're playing this tank, I think it's always going to be surprising you how hard the gun hits. That's something that you only usually expect on tank destroyers at tier 8 or tier 9 and tier 10. But you don't expect it of medium tanks that usually have way less alpha damage, except for maybe this tank, the Object 43U, and the Leopard 1, since all three of these tanks actually have quite a bit of alpha on their vehicles. So right here, we're just going to put some more pressure on this T-57, put one more big shot into him, 447 damage through his engine deck, and this game is pretty much decided very early on. Didn't take us very long to control the map and finish off the enemies. Unfortunately, this is the reality of World of Tanks nowadays. It's very one-sided a lot of the times, especially the higher you go in the tier, the more one-sided it is. But not every single game is like that. Thankfully, some games are actually quite entertaining still. So the IS-4 here is now making a move, and I switched over to Heat. We actually bounced a heat shell from the IS-4 right there, and we put one into his tracks, which are not moving because replays have been bugged for a couple of months now. And we do get some assistance damage as well because a Yak Panzer E100 just shows up. No, it's actually a Foch 155. And we get a total damage of 5,836 stealth and an additional 1,300 damage assisted. So giving us a grand total once again of, yeah, about 7,000 damage dealt. Incomplete, like, damage completely done. So let's talk about the 1-2-1. It's a pretty damn cool tank. It's the cumulation of the Chinese medium tank tech tree, and I think it's a pretty damn well cumulation. It's a very entertaining tank, a tank that is incredibly strong, a tank that is capable of doing basically all of the things you need a medium tank to do. And I think this gun is really special. Having this alpha is just such a nice thing nowadays in World of Tanks. And I really would recommend this to anyone who's playing Chinese or who's playing medium tanks or tank destroyers or heavy tanks. This is a tank that everyone can like, at least in my personal opinion. If you really dislike gun depression, if you really dislike having bad gun depression, you should probably first take a look at the tier 9. If the tier 9 is horrible, well, probably should not do this line. But other than that, the 1-2-1 is a real beast, and I really enjoy this tank. So if we now have a final verdict for the entire Chinese medium tank line, out of 10 points, I would give it 8 points. Why 8? Why not higher? Why not lower? I think that all of the Chinese medium tanks are fun to play. I like the tier 5, I like the tier 6, I like the tier 7. The tier 7 is probably a highlight. The tier 8 was a bit of a downer. That's probably one tank where you get a little bit of a deduction in points. But still, the tier 8 can be fun if you do invest a little bit of resources into it. The tier 9 was a lot of fun, even though it only had 3 degrees of gun depression. But the gun is really, really what makes the tier 9 vehicle. It's like a preview to the 1-2-1, because the 1-2-1 then combines all of the things you've learned prior, but it has 5 degrees of gun depression instead of 3. And it has this really cool gun that is really accurate, has very good alpha damage, has very good DPM. Everything just comes together, and it's a really great tank. It's a bit long for my taste, but at the same time, I think like the other medium tanks are also about the same length, most of them at least. So yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, because another minus point where I would deduct is the price that you have to pay for the research costs for all of the modules. I remember that the tier 9, the WZ120, costs you about 200,000 free experience to completely fully upgrade, and I just think that is no longer kind of the case. You should no longer have that with certain tanks in the game, and I think the Chinese medium tank line would probably benefit from cost reduction in the module cost. But other than that, the Chinese medium tank line is probably one of the medium tank lines that I've played in a while, that I've had the most fun in. I've played this line a very long time ago in the year 2015, but I had a lot of fun up until the tier 9. I played the tier 9 quite a bit, and I had a lot of fun in the tier 9, but I never made the jump to the tier 10, and it was a real big kind of bad decision that I didn't make the jump to the tier 10, because the 1-2-1 is even more fun than the tier 9, and it's really, really powerful. And in the right hands, in capable hands, it can do a lot of damage, and it can be quite game decisive in my opinion. I've had a lot of fun in this tank. I've had a lot of fun reviewing this line, and I hope you guys did enjoy it as well. We're going to move on. We're going to do another line in the near future. I'm going to put it on the YouTube dashboard, the community hub, where you can actually decide, where we can have a little bit of a democratic system, a vote. And hopefully you guys enjoy these reviews as much as I do making them. It just takes a long time, because I have to, get the vehicles. I have to fully upgrade them once again. It's going to cost me credits. And then afterwards I have to play them a lot more to be able to get the field modifications, because I want to have the full review. When I have the field modifications, it takes quite a bit of time, especially at tier 9 and 10, because a single field modification costs me 20,000 experience. And I don't have the time to, deck out everything, but I'm trying to have a little bit of a balance, so I can give you guys like reviews, and I'm trying to not take it too long. I know the 1-2-1 review has been a long time now, if you compare it to the WZ120, which I reviewed like 3 weeks ago, but I hope you guys can forgive me, and I see you guys on the next video.